Hello, everybody. We are here online with Jason Epstein. It's an unusual time for us to go live. He's a fantastic man. I'm following him from time to time, sometimes very closely when discussion on his Facebook page goes very hot. And he's hot himself. I'm confirming this fact. Very nice gentleman. Jason, how are you this day?
Thank God everything is good, but it's still early.
It's still early. So what time is it where you are?
It's 5:30 p.m. A glorious Thursday afternoon in southern Turkey.
Fantastic. This is our man in Turkey, our man Jason Epstein. Jason, tell us what you do in Turkey.
Right now, I am with my fiance, my lovely fiance, on a working holiday. But there'll be as any working vacation involves work. I'll have a few meetings, but right now we're taking a few days and just trying to get a little bit of October sun into our system.
But Turkey is your professional interest, because we're talking about your professional stuff here, along with, of course, general meet and greet.
Exactly. It's certainly a focus of mine. Although I do some work in other parts of the globe, Turkey has generally been my focus.
And how long are you doing this?
It's been almost 18 years now. I left the NGO world toward the end into early 2003 and haven't looked back.
Fantastic. So Turkey is. You explain America to the Turks and vice versa, right? Is it what you do?
Much of my work ultimately involves communication and involves being able to navigate through increasingly challenging waters.
Yeah, it's especially difficult because when you deal with other countries, they're kind of more decisive, so to speak, attitude towards them. Say people deal with Israel, yeah, Israel is now. Of course, there are kind of how do you say, reefs, right? Underwater reefs that you can strike. But Turkey is especially interesting and intriguing country because it's a Muslim country with a long Christian history. And a community that is so. I've never been except for 5 hours, and it's not the best 5 hours in my life in Istanbul airport. I've never been there, seriously, but I enjoyed the flyover, of course, and I saw a lot of things that I would like to walk into. But it has such a history that the Greeks, basically Greek culture, believe it or not, came from Ionia, formerly from Asia Minor. The Greeks who lived there, and in general, there's a fascinating piece of this planet where so many civilizations started and ended and collided. But I had a number of questions along the line of general friendliness and just to show the power of American technology these days, so we can talk to each other and be friends with each other through internet. I try only to talk to friends in my program that I have here, but regarding the friends. I had a plan, of course, as Mike Tyson famously said, any game plan is good until you get hit in the face. So Jason hit me in the face with a piece that got published in the Newsweek. Day ago or two, right?
Yes,
and the piece is called "A Pro-Western Azerbaijan Deserves American Support," and it's an opinion written by him in co-authorship with Irina Zuckerman, who I also hope to get in Russian to speak on one of the programs that I can deliver to the people who would appreciate it the most. I think we won't get lost with our Russian audience, and this program is also targeting Russian audiences that speak English. So, what is it about?
Well, the piece was a response to recent fighting between Armenia and Azerbaijan. There has been a not so frozen conflict in place since 1992 in and around Azerbaijan, Armenia, the disputed occupied territory of Karabakh and surrounding area. And there have been numerous rounds of fighting over the years, but this latest episode has been considerably more bloody than in the past. What further prompted me to talk with Irina about the need to author a piece was that there was this time around. It seemed like there was more of a talk of a religious conflict, that this was somehow about brutal Muslim invaders targeting a Christian community, an undermanned Christian community. And Irina and I wanted to set the record straight that this is much more complicated. For example, the Iranian regime has long supported the Armenians. The Russians, under Putin, certainly have been more sympathetic toward Armenia as well, while Israel has had robust diplomatic ties, but also strategic and economic ties with Azerbaijan. So even though Azerbaijan is an overwhelmingly Shia country, so we wanted to make clear that this was not a case of some sort of crusade, and that the United States should recognize that Azerbaijan is not just pro-Western, but also a strategic ally. And so that was the case we wanted to make.
It's fantastic, and also it's interesting that in the States, say among the people who are watching or will be watching this program, because it came without any announcement, but they will get if they would be interested in the subject. I think that much more Armenians will live in United States than there are Azeris, right?
Yeah,
From what I
and
know.
there is because the United States is a little bit larger than Brooklyn and maybe
Yeah.
Rego Park, Queens. Yes, I would agree with you that
Yeah, the
that
Glendale,
the
and
Armenian,
I've been in LA, and of course. So the
yeah.
common sense here is that the Armenians are the good guys in this situation, and it's also a Christian people, which rings the bell with a lot of American population, and they are under attack. But you're saying that the beginning of this particular round of conflict was not entirely the fault of Azeris, or it was kind of slow cooking situation, simmering pot.
As I understand it, the fighting really broke out in July, although it worsened in September. And again, there are reports. It's difficult to judge the reliability of these reports as to how these conflicts begin, because there really isn't a great deal of accurate reporting that goes on in the region. Um, but like I said, it's much more complicated. It's more of ethnic of if you want to call it anything, it's more of an ethnic issue than it is a religious one. And the important thing here is we need to have a ceasefire. We need to ensure that there are no more civilian casualties. There, Azerbaijan's second largest city has been repeatedly bombed. We also need to have greater American involvement, to try to solve the larger issue once and for all. That is the occupation of Karabakh by Armenian forces, uh, the million or so internally displaced persons, what we call refugees, but those who stay within their country, We have to solve that issue as well, because frankly, a peaceful Caucasus is good for the West. And if it's good for the West, you can plausibly make the argument it's not so good for the Kremlin, and it's really not good for the mullahs in Tehran.
But there's also the matter of oil involved, right?
That is
The,
correct.
the pipeline.
40%, by the way, 40%, it's estimated that 40% of Israel's oil comes from the Baku Tbilisi Ceyhan pipeline, meaning a pipeline that begins in the Azeri capital of Baku, which is located on the western shore of the Caspian Sea, goes overland into Georgia, and then comes out, terminates in the Turkish city of Ceyhan.
Do you think if anything would happen with the story where the Emirates pipeline would be going through the Palestinian territories, through Israel, and end up in the Mediterranean somewhere, just having some terminal there to be put on tankers, and would that situation change? Would this project change Israel's dependence? Would Israel get some taste of this Saudi or Emirate oil?
I don't think it fundamentally changes the calculus involving the Azeri oil. What it does is it diversifies. It's important for Israel to have diversification, uh, both in terms of
Of
oil
course.
and, of course, natural gas. So one could argue that is a win-win situation for Israel. It doesn't necessarily mean that Israel wants to put all of its eggs in that basket either.
Hmm.
Um, and look, there's also just to close the circle on the energy issue. There's also an argument to be made that there is gas that comes out of Azerbaijan as well, and certainly one of the priorities of the Trump administration, particularly when you think about the sanctions, the crippling sanctions that have been put on the Nord Stream 2 project, is Azerbaijani gas means that Europe is less reliant on Moscow. And so again, Azerbaijan's importance can't be overstated. It helps that it's also a pluralistic society, meaning that there is religious coexistence, and it's peaceful coexistence. There are vibrant Jewish communities in Azerbaijan, and not just Ashkenazi Jews. You have Mountain Jews and Georgian Jews also, and some of them who have emigrated to Israel go back to Azerbaijan either to see their families or to do business.
Yeah, yeah, of course, the usual thing. Same with Uzbekistan, where I'm from, where a lot of the Bukharian Jews came back and found new opportunities in the old country after finding new opportunities in the new country. They made a couple of dollars there, and they returned to Bukhara, to Samarkand, to start something there. And you don't realize, when I lived there, I did not realize how legendary those names sound to the Western ear, especially in Britain. Samarkand is something associated with Black Watch and all those interesting tidbits. You mentioned presidents who shouldn't be mentioned, right? This is the forbidden word in the United States. President Trump.
Well, I thought you were going to say Aliyev.
Yeah, yeah. So when I happened to go to Italy right after the elections of 2016, and when people heard that I was from the United States, because you introduce yourself somehow to some people, you have to do that. I'm never against talking, as you can tell probably, to strangers. But I asked. The guy said, "Viva Trump, Viva Trump." What's the attitude in Turkey towards President Trump?
Well, if you're asking about the man on the street, the man or
Yeah.
woman on the street, Trump is viewed as an alpha male. And of course, Erdogan is viewed the same way. It's not surprising that there are some similarities between the two men in that they both paint themselves as outsiders. Uh, Americans may not realize, or many Americans may not realize, that the term deep state was popularized here in Turkey, um, by groups of very, very passionate, very radical nationalists here, who would protect, sought to protect the country from potential instability or worse, invasion. And but it came to mean something different. It came to also mean something akin to the establishment, which of course we also hear about in the United States today. So of course there are some important differences between the two men, but the first thing you think about are the similarities. I would very quickly caution, of course, though, that just because there is a bond between Trump and Erdogan, it's important to note that Turkey has very little support in the United States these days. It's quite different from what I experienced 15 or 20 years ago. On the other hand, anti-Americanism is real in Turkey, and it's been like this for a long, long time. It predates Trump. It predates Obama. Bill Clinton was probably more the exception. But if you go back decades, you will find that anti-Americanism has always had a place in Turkey, and so whatever good feeling there may be about Trump, it's kind of superficial, meaning that it doesn't necessarily extend to American foreign policy generally.
But Americans who I know who visited Turkey came back absolutely fascinated by the country, by the friendliness, by the cuisine. And I never heard, I mean, I didn't have much experience in my travels being a subject of hostile attitude, except for one small incident in Italy. But in general, people are fascinating. Americans, we are easy.
But sure, I mean, it's one thing. It's one thing to host Americans and to welcome them to such a rich nation like Turkey. It's another, of course, to disagree with U.S. foreign policy. But you're right. I mean the attitude toward visitors from here is remarkable, and Americans are made to feel at home. There are always going to be complaints of what our CIA is up to,
Oh, right,
and
of
all
course.
these devious plots. But it's as long as they know that we're not CIA, we're golden.
There was too much Hollywood movies. Like everybody else. Our CIA, our FBI, you can tell, how bad they are in terms of, what we learned in recent years and Trump years. Especially this thing with the laptop. It just boggles my mind that the whole thing, the guy couldn't turn this laptop from Hunter Biden. Probably he first tried to return it to Hunter to get the money, right? Or something like that, because that's when you get paid. And Hunter didn't call back, and then he turned to FBI, and only then he turned to the Rudy Giuliani's lawyer. So that's how it all came to light, and FBI got it. FBI guy told him, as the guy says, the owner of the store, keep your mouth shut and you'll be fine. And he didn't keep his mouth shut. And yesterday, the great news came that they found that the information on the laptop was traced to some FBI investigation, implying that it was already kind of maybe planted by Russians because the investigation was about Russian money laundering. But the article came on Fox News, of all sort of places, and it had no dates. And dates are very important. When did it identify that it was connected? Was it before they got the laptop, or was it after? Because if it was after, then it's just part of something that was done before by them.
Well, it sounds
It's a
as
big
if
mess.
there's a Hunter Biden business associate who has now gone on the record, a veteran of the U.S. Navy, and I haven't been online for too long today, but I did notice that something that John Roberts at Fox News, for example, had tweeted out. It was a statement, and I think there's going to be a lot more to come. It's going to be fascinating.
No, absolutely. And, I think that American people can, I mean, switching from Turkey and the Azerbaijani conflict, American people can digest at this point. I mean, the best of us can digest that much information and make their own conclusions, and hopefully vote Trump, because there's no one else to vote for in the situation. So, so you think could there be such thing as the most desirable? I mean, no. What I wanted to tell you, I mean, not to tell, but just to throw it into the conversation, that Turkey has a history of successful reforms in general. You know, it's not all like a siege of Constantinople, right? There was also Ataturk and the westernization, and people are conditioned. Say in Russia, there is no such thing as history of successful reforms. Everything is considered a failure. Although people think of Gorbachev, and I also respect Gorbachev, but people inside Russia, they don't like him at all. So Turkey is different.
But Turkey, look, Turkey has had its share of ups and downs, and you know, Ataturk was one of those revered leaders who managed to hold off the Allied powers after World War One, carve out the nation of Turkey from the ruins of the Ottoman Empire, was able to modernize the country in remarkable ways, create a secular nation. And of course, in recent years, there's been a bit of a, I don't want to necessarily call it a retreat, maybe some would call it a correction, but there is, Islam is certainly more important in public life today. I have long argued that concerns about President Erdogan may be very legitimate in terms of his authoritarian governing style. But I still see that less as a religious issue, more of a political one. Again, it's not as if during the Kemalist times, the overtly Kemalist times, that there was a Jeffersonian democracy. It was a democracy here, but it had its elements of illiberalism as well. And so what's going on is Turkey is still trying to find itself even 100 years later. The centennial of the establishment of the Turkish Republic is in a few short years, 2023,
Uh-huh.
and I imagine that the second century of the Turkish Republic will continue to have pushes and pulls, trying to find the appropriate equilibrium.
Yeah, of course. It's only looks in the textbook, in the history textbook. It looks like they did this, and then they did that, and then they did this, and finally the Roman Empire came together. But in reality, it's a situation that is much, much, much more complex than anything they would teach you in Columbia or Yale or Harvard or Brooklyn Community College. It's the whole being in the middle of history, like, as we are now. It's I mean, which suddenly came this realization to the American people that kind of the history is not just a new model of a car or a new building, you know, record with the record height growing somewhere in the middle of nowhere, but it also this big social understanding and what America is, because everything seemed to be so predetermined, and all of a sudden this presidency came about, and I found myself very welcoming this president. Eventually, was not an easy thing, but for me to come around, because I was never a fan. I was never a fan of his show. I knew that he existed. I could spot him in Home Alone 2 or whenever wherever he was, Home Alone 1. But no more than that.
Too.
It was there was a cruise guy, but then I saw that the man's a fighter, and I immediately draw a parallel historically with the big changers of the direction. Big who were not, none of them was flawless, but they knew where to take the country. I think we're going in the right direction, and Turkey will love us again, or even more.
Well, yeah. Look,
If Trump is
there are
reelected, what do you think? Would it be if,
no.
where, or when?
Again, I think that there are there's bound to be an improvement in the bilateral relationship if Trump is reelected. On the other hand, there are going to be continuing challenges. It's even when for example, President Erdogan sometimes speaks in heated tones about Jerusalem and Al-Aqsa. And I try to explain to obviously I'm very concerned by the content of the remarks, but I also have to remember that while on the surface it sounds like he's taking aim at Israel and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, he's also in competition with other Muslim majority countries. He's in competition with the UAE. He's in competition with Saudi. He may be in competition with Jordan. He's definitely in competition with Sisi's Egypt. And so many of these words are really they're of course meant to sting Israel, but they're really directed at others who are vying for influence with the Muslim populations in the larger region. And sometimes I think we fail to understand that. Now, that's not to say, of course, that that the United States shouldn't be concerned about some of the different religious strains within Islam and how they affect relationships. There is a concern about Muslim Brotherhood, naturally, which of course is an Egyptian invention. But of course, there is some sympathy with the movement here in Turkey. So there are definitely going to be some challenges ahead. There are challenges involving Greece too. But the important thing to remember is Turkey is needed in ongoing efforts by the United States to contain, if not roll back, the Iranian regime. Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Israel are the three key pillars for Trump's foreign policy toward limiting, if not rolling back, Iranian influence.
It's definitely a keystone between the East and West. And maybe last question, Jason. If Turks had you asked the man in the street, the proverbial person, who would they rather throw their fate with, so to speak, Russia or the United States? Who's closer to them? Because Putin wants to be friends with them to a degree, like he wants to be friends with everybody from, certain. I don't believe he wants to be friends with anybody personally.
Well,
But
keep in mind, of course, that until Erdogan, Turkish foreign policy was was nothing like it is today. Turkey is a big believer today in soft power and on occasion perhaps a little bit of hard power. But Turkey historically has been much more focused on the internal aspects, making sure that there's always territorial integrity, that threats are do not present itself on the border. It's really only been since the turn of the millennium, that Turkey has become almost a global influence, with interests ranging from South Asia to South America. And Turkish Airlines is now a truly global carrier. I just noticed, even at this time of COVID, they launched flights from Istanbul direct to Bali.
wow.
I'm sorry, not to Bali, to Tahiti. Excuse me.
Uh-huh.
And so in terms of asking whether Putin or Trump, look, Turkey historically has wanted to go its own way, even though it was a faithful NATO ally. But I think if you ask most Turks, they would like to align with the West. They would also like the West to better understand some of their issues, though. They're painfully aware that when they deal with Russia, they may end up being the decidedly junior partner. And so I think when there
Yeah,
has been
that's how Russia likes it.
right? So, and also, as you know, Russia tends to like instability along its borders, and so Russia is sometimes up to no good in Syria, and of course, as we talked about in Karabakh as well. Um, so, whereas even though Turkey, of course, would be is a junior partner with the United States as well, it may be seen as more manageable. And of course, being a partner with Europe is also desirable. For the longest time, Turkey wanted to be a member of the European Union. The European Union, though, the countries inside the European Union, particularly France and Germany, tried to find every excuse imaginable to keep Turkey out. And so now we're seeing the consequences of a turkey not being inside the tent but outside.
Yeah, it's fascinating to observe this whole thing and keeping in mind the history of the place. And Jason, thank you so very much. I think we had uh, interesting talk, and hopefully we'll continue before the next article of you comes out sometime in the future.
Well,
Thank you.
I look forward to that occasion. And if you need me to do a musical number, I'll learn how to play an instrument first.
We'll work on that. I gotta write a libretto when you have one ready.
Well, thank you so much.
Jason,
I
thank you.
enjoyed this.
It was a pleasure. Thank you. I hope our people like it. All right.
All right. Barisharus.
Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.